Greetings, math fans. All right, so this is chapter 7b. It's a very short chapter, and this is day one. Okay, so chapter 7b, day one. So basically what we're going to do in this chapter, this is only 2 days, is we are going to deal with the square root of a negative number. Okay, so negative number. That's basically what this chapter is about. Okay, so that's what... let's just kind of talk a little bit about the basics here. The square root of -1, super important. That's equal to I. That's what I is an imaginary number. That's because imaginary starts with I. Okay, it's a lowercase I. So please don't give me a capital I. It's not a capital I. It's a lowercase I like that. And but that is what the square root of -1 is. That is kind of the main focus. I got a couple crazy things to teach you guys about that. But basically, you need to understand the square root of -1 is I. So if I give you a problem like the square root of -4, I'm going to kind of show you the long way to do it and then show you what you really need to do to make it a little quicker. Okay, so really that's equal to -1 times 4. Okay, and if you remember, the square root of -1 is I. So what you're going to do is you're going to take this -1, you're going to bring it on the outside, and you're just going to have I on the outside, and you're still going to have that 4 underneath there. Okay, so this is the only thing that's new from last chapter to this chapter is literally I have a negative in there, and I pull the negative out, and I make it turn that into an I. And now this guy right here now is all chapter 7a. It's all what you learned before. And what's the square root of 4? 2. So the answer is 2I. That is the answer to this problem. Okay, you treat it like a variable in that I've had kids say, well, Mr. Chris, can I do I2? And you can't, because it's just like you say 5x, right? You don't say x5. Okay, so it's 2, the answer to this one is 2I. It's very simple. Okay, so again, if I would say the square root of -9, you'd go, oh, okay, that's -1 times 9. And the square root of -1 is I, so you pull the I out. Please don't leave the I underneath the square root. It's not. The square root of -1 is I. It's not the square root of I. It's just I. So you pull the I out. It sounds kind of violent. But you pull the I out, and this is what you get. I times the square root of 9. Of course, the square root of 9 is 3. So the answer to this one is 3I. Okay? So the first thing, I had you guys do this. I had you write square root of -1 and then square root of -1. But truly, when you see a negative, math fans, just take it out and write I. That's all you have to do. Okay? So like I said, if I had the square root of -25, I could write it as -1 times 25. It's an extra step. Why do that? You take the negative out and you just make it an I. So it's I times the square root of 25. Then you just deal with the square root of 25, which is 5. So the answer is 5I. Okay? All right, so let's do a couple more problems here. Again, they're not too crazy. So if I gave you guys the square root of, let's say, -7, you're going to pull the I out, and you're going to get I root 7. Now, even like from before, can you simplify the square root of 7? No, you can't. Remember I had you guys write on the top of your paper 2, 3, 5, and 7 to simplify square roots? It's the exact same thing, guys. You have a square root of 7, so you can't do anything with it, so your answer is just I root 7. So let's try another one here, the square root of -12. Okay, so the first thing is you're going to pull an I out and then make this 12. And then, again, it's chapter 7a. So I had you guys with square root of 12, break it up to 2 times 2, right? Keep dividing by 2. So 6 times 2 is 12, and then, or 6 times 2 is 12, and then 6 breaks up to 2 and 3. So 12 breaks up to 2 times 3. Remember, divide it by 2 until you can't divide it anymore. Divide it by 3 until you can't do it. 5 and 7. Okay, and you're going to pretty much get all your answers. So here we go. Bring that out, just like normal. So the answer is 2I root 3. Okay? It really isn't difficult at all. Okay, let's try another one here. How about the square root of -20? Okay, so I'm going to pull an I out right away, make it positive, so now I get I square root of 20. And so 20 is, divided by 2 is 10, divided by 2 is 5, so 2 times 2 times 5. Okay, and then we've got the 2's. 2's come out. So 2I root 5. Okay. But it's pretty simple. Just remember, the square root of -1 is I. You see a negative in there, take it out. Okay. How about let's do a little crazier one. Square root of, I don't know, -120. Okay, that's good. So I root 120. That's easy. I took the negative out and it's an I there. Okay, so now remember I had you guys do it. And again, you have your calculator. Just take 120 divided by 2. So it's 2 times 60. 60 divided by 2 is 30. 30 divided by 2 is 15. Okay, I can't divide 15 by 2 anymore. So now I move up to 3. So 2, 3, 5, and 7. And 15 divided by 3 is 5. So there we go. That's 120 broken up into as much as you can. And I only have one pair of stuff, nothing else. So it's 2I root, that's 6 times 5, 2I root 30. And there you go. There's your answer. Okay? So that's pretty easy. If you have a negative on the outside, let's just say there's a negative on the outside. So if it looks like -4, now that's not on the inside. So that truly is, you just take the square root of that, you get 2. There's no I, right? It's just -2. Only when the square root, or when the negative's on the inside of the square root, that's when you have an I. So if I had something like this, negative square root of -4, those negatives do not cancel, guys. So please don't cancel the negatives out. You need to, right away, as soon as you see that, you pull an I out. And that negative stays there. So I root, or negative I, square root of 4. The square root of 4 is 2. So negative I times 2 is -2I. So this negative here, don't make an issue of it. It's just kind of hanging out there. It's just kind of part of the problem. Okay? So, if I said negative square root of -50. Okay? Got to deal with that. So that's negative I square root of 50. And now we got to deal with the square root of 50. And remember, 2, 3, 5, and 7. Okay, you can divide by 2, and you get 25. And then you can't do anything else but divide it by 5. So it's 5 and 5. Okay, so a pair of 5s come out. So it's -5I root 2. Okay, right? Not bad. And we can get a little crazier with fractions. But again, this is all part of Chapter 7a, guys. Okay, it's nothing fancy at all. So if I said like the square root of -16/25. Okay, you guys, again, pull that negative out right away. I. And then you got 16/25. Okay, so you guys should recognize 16/25 is square root of 16 over square root of 25. And some of you guys might say, Mr. how can you put it on the top and on the bottom? Guys, just think about it. If I said 3, isn't that the same thing as 3/1? You don't say 3 is 3/3 or 1/3. I mean, come on. Okay, so 3 is 3/1. So I is I/1. So the I stays on top basically. Okay, and then the square root of 16 is 4. So it's 4I, and the square root of 25 is 5. And then your answer is 4I/5. Okay. Not too bad. Not too bad. Okay, so that's the first part, just dealing with negative square roots. Okay, that's cool. So real quickly with multiplication, and this is kind of a real basic thing here, but if I multiply, let's say 2 times I, okay, that's 2I. I mean, it's just really easy. Or if I said 4 times 7I, it's like if you have a variable. If I said 4 times 7x, you would say 28x. So this is 28I. Okay, pretty simple, right? You don't really do anything crazy with that. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about. Again, this is a little bit different topic here. It's kind of has to do with i's. But if I give you guys, you're going to have an I, but you're also going to have, and I'm going to list these, so just kind of bear with me, okay? So I'm going to say I to the 0, I to the first power, I to the second power, and I to the third power. So there's basically you're going to have 4 possibilities: I to the 0, I to the 1, I to the 2, I to the 3. So your i's are now going to have exponents. As we're going to find out as we move along here, okay? So the i's will have exponents. Basically, if you guys write this down, this should be on your note sheet too, by the way. I to the 0 is 1, because anything to the 0 power is 1. I to the 1 is I, because anything to the first power is itself. Now, the only thing that's confusing is I to the second power. Okay? I to the second power equals -1. This is actually, I'm going to put a little star by this one. In fact, I'm going to make it a red star. That probably is the most important one of them all. I to the second power is -1. We're going to use that later on, as we'll see. Okay? And then I to the third power, think about it. If I multiply I to the first times I to the second, isn't that I to the third? So if let's multiply, this should be an I. If I multiply I times -1, that's going to be -I. Okay? So math fans, this should be really pretty key in your notes. Okay? All right, so how are we going to deal with this now? You have I to the 0, 1, 2, 3. This number, let's see, I'll make it in green. This number right here, it's a 0, this is a 1, this is a 2, and this is a 3. What I'm going to do is, these green numbers are also remainders. So this is remainder 0, remainder 1, remainder 2, and remainder 3. And you're like, well, what the heck are you doing? Okay, so let's get to the reason I'm showing you this. What you're going to do, this is the rule, when you're trying to deal with the exponents of i's. What you want to do is you want to take the number and you want to divide it by 4. Okay, because there are 4 possibilities here. Okay, 4 possibilities: out of the 0, out of the 1, out of the 2, out of the 3. You want to take the number and you divide it by 4. Okay, when I say the number, I really mean the exponent. Okay, that's important. You take the exponent and you divide it by 4. So I'm either, let's just do, if I do 0 divided by 4, that's going to give me 0. So this is the remainder of 0. If I do 1, that's the exponent 1 divided by 4, that's going to give me 0.25. Whenever you see 0.25, that's a remainder of 1. If I do 2 divided by 4, that's going to give me 0.50, and that's going to give me a remainder of 2. If I do 3 divided by 4, that's going to give me 0.75, and that's a remainder of 3. So this is actually pretty important here as well. So I'm going to kind of highlight this. If it's 0, it's a remainder of 0. If it's 0.25, remainder of 1. If it's 0.5, it's remainder of 2, and 0.75 is remainder of 3. Again, you're still saying, Mr. Curvis, what are you doing? Okay, so let me get to what I'm actually talking about. If I ask you, what is I to the 21st power? You're either going to tell me it's 1, I, -1, or -I. It's one of those 4. And this is what you do with this rule here, math fans. With this rule is you're going to tell me what that exponent is. So I'm going to put my calculator, 21. Go ahead and do that. 21 divided by 4. And if you say, well, Mr. Curtis, I don't have a calculator with me, well, just get your phone out and use your calculator on your phone. Okay, so 21 divided by 4 gives me 5.25. Okay, so look at what this is. There's 5.25. That's my second line. 1 divided by 4. See that 0.25 right here? I don't want to keep writing all over because it's going to get messy. But it says 2.25. That means it's a remainder of 1. So remainder of 1. Go to your chart and look what remainder of 1 is. Remainder of 1 is right here. So the answer is I. So I to the 21st is I. Okay? So again, I don't care. See this number right here, math fans? I don't care about that 5. It's 5.25. I don't care about it. It doesn't matter to me. I only care about the 0.25. That's going to give me my remainder. So let's do another one. If I said I to the 22nd power, you're going to do 22 divided by 4, and you're going to get 5.5. Okay? I don't care about the 5. I only care about the 0.5. What is the remainder? It's a remainder of 2. Okay? And think about it. Maybe when you did division back in the day in junior high, or whenever you learned division, right? You said 22 divided by 4 is 5, because that's 20, right? And then you have 2 left over. That's your remainder of 2. Well, that's kind of what we're doing here, math fans. All right, I understand I have the 0.5, but that's just to help you out. If you want to put that on your note sheet of, 0.5 means remainder of 2. So it's 0.5. So what is I to the 22nd? I to the 22nd is, look at your chart now, the thing in blue that I have boxed in blue. So I, see that I squared? It's the remainder of 2. Same thing as remainder. The answer to this one is -1. Okay, let's do I to the 50, I to the 51st power. Okay, so you're going to say 51 divided by 4 gives you 12.75. Okay, again, I don't care about the 12. I only care about that 0.75. What's the remainder? Well, look at the chart. It's 3. 0.75 is 3. So a remainder of 3. And then you got to go back to the blue box here and say, what is I cubed? Oh, it's -I. So I to the 51st is -I. Okay? So it's not bad, right? It's, again, you just, when you divide, you have your remainder. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a few more examples here. I'm going to erase some of this stuff, but I'm going to do a few more examples, but keep some of the stuff up here. Okay, so I kind of erased the stuff I didn't really want, and this is like, to me, this is the chart that I have in my notes. Okay, out of the 0, 1, 2, 3, what I have circled in blue is the 1i, -1, -I, and then I even have the remainders here, okay? So if you divide by 4, which is on the bottom here, you're going to need to get 0, 0.25, 0.5, or 0.75, and then you go and use the chart to the left. Okay? All right, so let's do a few examples. So if I said I to the 10th, okay, 10 divided by 4 is 2.5. What's 0.5? Look at the chart. Remainder 2. That's I squared. Oh, answer is -1. Okay. I to the 13th power. Okay. 13 divided by 4 is 3.25. Okay, only care about the 0.25. Look at the chart. 0.25, remainder 1. I to the 1. Oh, the answer is I. Okay. I to the 103rd power. Whew, crazy. 103 divided by 4. 25.75. Okay, 0.75 means a remainder of 3. I to the 3rd, -I. Okay, and let's do one more. I to the 48th power. Okay, so we have 48 divided by 4 is 12.0, right? There's basically no remainder. 12.0, so remainder is 0. That means I to the 0, that's 1. Okay? So that's how you do I's, guys. Oh, that rhymed. Okay, that's how you do I with an exponent. Okay? So the deal is you are not allowed to have an exponent with an I. Can you guys remember that? So all these answers are either 1i, -1, or -I. You are not allowed to have an exponent with the I. That's it, period. Okay? So if you put an answer on the answer blank of I squared, I'm going to mark it wrong. Because you should have told me it's -1. Or I to the 3rd power, doesn't matter. I to the 3rd power, wrong. That equals -I. Okay? No exponents. Write that down someplace. No exponents with I. Okay, no exponent with I. Gotta know that, guys. Very important. Okay, all right, that's cool. So let's actually, because that's part of your homework, is you just have to figure out, give you a bunch of different i's. Okay, so I got one more thing to show you guys that actually uses this concept. Okay, so let me delete this. Okay, so basically, if I give you guys a problem like this, the square root of -3 times the square root of -7. All right, the deal is you cannot do anything with a negative under the square root. So can't do anything with a negative under the radical. The first thing you have to do is you got to take out an I. You can't add, can't subtract, can't multiply, can't divide. Can't do anything with a negative under the radical. Okay? So it looks like you could say -3 times -7 is positive 21, but you can't do that. Okay, the first thing you do is you're going to take out an I. So I root 3 times I root 7. That's all you're going to do. And then you're going to multiply the i's together. So what's I times I? Just like x times x is x squared. I times I is I squared. And the square root of 3 times square root of 7 is the square root of 21. Now you can't simplify square root of 21. But remember what I told you? I had big, bold letters. No exponents with i's. Ever, 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 ever. Okay? So look at your little sheet. Okay? I squared. You could divide that by 4 if you want. It gives you 0.5. Okay? And 0.5 gives you a remainder of 2, which is what? -1. So the answer to this problem is you can write -1 square root of 21 or negative square root of 21. I don't care. Either one's okay. Okay, the answer is negative square root of 21. Okay? So basically, let's just do another one here. Square root of -6 times the square root of -3. Okay, you can't multiply them together until you take an I out. So I root 6 times I root 3. Cool. Well, you get I squared, which we know what I squared is. Remember I told you that little asterisk by the I squared, that's going to be the most important one that we're going to ever use? Well, here, this is the reason we're going to use it so much, because when you see an I squared, you know it's just -1. Okay? But anyway, we get 6 times 3, which is negative square root of 18. Now, remember, guys, this is, again, chapter 7a. You got to split that 18 up. So it's going to be, 18 is going to be divided by 2 is 9. 9 divided by 3, so it's 3 and 3. So the answer is -3, because you took out a 3, right? Times the square root of 2. That's the answer to this problem. -3 root 2. Okay? So let's do a few more of these, and then we're done. It'll be about a 25-minute lesson here, but it's cool. So if I have the square root of we'll say -8 times the square root of -6. Okay, again, you cannot do anything unless you take an I out. So it's going to be I root 8 times I root 6. So we're going to get I squared. And right away, I can write that as -1. So guys, now what I have is 8 times 6 is 48. This is chapter 7a. Square root of 48. Oops, so I'm right here. So negative square root in 48 breaks down to, if I divide it by 2, remember 2, 3, 5, and 7. So divide by 2, I get 24 and 2. 24 breaks down to, divide that by 2, I get 12 and 2. 12 breaks down to 6 and 2. 6 breaks down to 3 and 2. So there it is. 48 is broken down. Take that out, take that out. Take basically 2 2's out, which is 4. So it's -4, because there's a negative on the outside, right? Square root of 3. That's your answer for that problem. Okay? All right, so remember that, before you do any operation, adding, subtracting, multiplying, dividing, and really the one we're doing here now is just multiplying, you can't have a square root underneath there, negative under the square root, okay? So let's just do one little crazy one. So if I have a bunch of negatives, watch this. This is being very scary. Square root of negative, well, let's go with -7. square root of negative 7. Lots of negatives. Whew! This is not a very happy problem. Okay, and then times, we'll put another negative here, and negative 14. Okay, there's a lot of negatives. Tons of negatives. So the first thing you do is just take this out. Guys, remember, we've done this already now. Take that out. So we have negative I root 7 times negative I root 14. Right? Keep the negatives here. These negatives, guys, this negative and this negative, they don't go away. It's just I, or a square root underneath the radical, becomes a square root of, I can't even speak. The square root of a negative becomes I. That's what I did. I made it I, but I kept these red negatives because they were part of the problem. So now let's multiply these together. What's negative? And this, again, multiply the numbers together. Negative 1 times negative 1 is positive 1. Right? So these multiply to give you positive 1. And I times I is I squared. Square root of, if I multiply these together, I get 98. Okay, so what's I squared? Negative 1. And let's start breaking 98 up. Well, 98 is not too friendly of a number. I can do 2 right away. So 2 times 49. And then if you guys know, 49, the only thing that goes into that is 7. So it's actually 2 times 7 times 7. 7's come out, and you get negative 7 root 2. Okay, so again, if there's a negative on the outside, leave it there. Okay, so I know I said one more, but this is the last one because I want to do one of them with a negative. So if I said negative square root of negative 5 times the square root of negative 10. Okay, so let's multiply. It's negative times 1, right? Pull that out. So I have a 1 on the end, both of them, just kind of show you, right? I'm going to pull this out first. Pull out the negative. So I do. So you get negative I square root of 5 times, there's no negative here, so it's just I root 10. Okay, you guys okay with that? And this is what's negative 1 times 1. It's just negative I squared, right? And square root of 50. Well, it's I squared, negative 1. So basically, if you have a negative already, and this is negative 1, don't you guys agree it's just 1? You guys should know that, right? And whatever I squared is, it's a negative 1, but if there's a negative here already, it's just positive 1. So it's 1, and then 50 is 2, and that's 25, so 25 is 5 and 5. So the answer is 5 root 2. Okay, so just be careful with the negatives. All right, if there's a negative under the radical, you pull it out. If there's not a negative under the radical, then you don't do anything with it, right? But be careful, the negatives are already on the outside. Okay? All right, math fans. Like I said, if you do the worksheet, it's got a lot of different types of problems on it. Good practice. So give that a shot, and hopefully you guys are good to go. All right? Have an outstanding day. Adios, math fans. Goodbye.